T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. We've gone for main engine start. We have...
From its first flight in 1981 till its final landing in 2011, the Space Shuttle was the backbone of the American space program. Built upon the experience gained from Apollo, and with the goal of making a reusable spacecraft, NASA accomplished a feat that most thought was impossible. 5 complete shuttle systems were built and completed 135 missions to low Earth orbit. They conducted science experiments, deployed and fixed the Hubble Space Telescope, and helped to build the International Space Station, which is in healthy operation still. Using Kerbal Space Program, we'll take a deep dive into each mission, looking at the crew, payload, and mission objectives. Join us on this walk through history. And hey, you just might learn something. I'm Sears JT, and this is Project STS. STS-7, Space Shuttle Challenger once again. This time it has a little bit more of a complicated mission, and we'll get into the specifics of its mission. You can kind of tell from its payload here that there's going to be a little bit more involved with this one than just deploying a simple TDRS satellite. The crew for this mission, which has a historic significance to it, but we'll get into that on ascent. The commander is Crippen, who you recognize from STS-1. Fred Hawk, which it's not spelled the same, but still a cool name nonetheless. John Fabian is a mission specialist. Sally K. Ride, which we'll get to her. And Norman E. Thagard, which I probably should have looked who had to ride in the crew cabin. You know what? I'm gonna or the mid deck. I'm actually gonna check that right now. I don't want to put somebody in the mid deck that wasn't there. So yeah, Crippen in seat 1, Hawk in seat 2, Fabian seat 3, Sally was in seat 4, and Thagard, poor Thagard, he was stuck in the mid deck. So that's right. So we have the proper crew. We'll go ahead and seal up the payload bay. We'll roll this out to the pad. One more thing I'm going to check. Make sure the sun skirts, or the sunshades, not sun skirts, are locked on satellite canisters. I think everything else is good. The Canada arm is back on this mission. It's been missing for the past 2. We'll get into its purpose once we get up there. Alright, seal the payload bay. Examine it and roll it out to the pad. So while this is heading out to the pad, I will talk about, let me see. Were there any delays? There were no delays for STS-7, which that's the second mission today that actually launched on time. It launched June 18th, 1983. 2 months after STS-6, so they turned around Challenger in 2 months, which may seem like a very short time, but once we talk about STS-8, they knocked that record out of the water. Launched at 11:30 a.m. UTC or 5:30 a.m. Eastern. STS-7 Space Shuttle Challenger lifting off in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. Liftoff of STS-7, Space Shuttle Challenger. Clear the tower. Go for roll. Definitely tell there's a higher part count in this thing's payload bay. You guys can probably tell too. The computer does not like it. So we're on our way up. I'll talk about the crew a little bit. Crippen, we kind of talked about already. He was pilot on STS-1. He was a rookie astronaut on STS-1, first of his class to go to space, part of astronaut group 7. And that group 7, again, like group 8 and group 6, contain a lot of names that we're going to see throughout this series. He was part of SMEET, the Skylab habitation test stuff. And he was capsule communicator on the Skylab missions and Apollo Soyuz test missions. So we kind of talked about a lot of that during STS-1. Keep an eye on this ascent profile a little bit. It's wanting to turn over on me, and I'm trying to fight it. Frederick Hawk. Which still, I love that name. So he has extensive fighter pilot experience in the Air Force, which he was part of many combat missions, like during Vietnam, and a lot of test pilot experience. Selected as part of Group 8. Again, mentioned that before. Brandenstein, Brewster Shaw, Fabian on this mission. All right, roll on. SRB SEP. All right, it looks like we've got back control. All right, so back to Frederick Hawk. He's actually with 3 of his classmates on this mission: Fabian, Sally Ride, and Thagard. So to dig into Group 8, since there's a lot of Group 8 on this mission, Hawk and Brandenstein were pilots, and Ride, Thagard, and Fabian, the 3 mission specialists on this mission, weirdly enough, were mission specialists. So they sometimes divide it, with Group from the last one, 6, I believe. No, I'm already forgetting. They were all just science astronauts. So any astronauts from that group were all mission specialists. Group 8 was not like that. There was kind of a mix of both, depending on your specialty. So like we'll get into the 3 mission specialists, Ride, Thagard, and Fabian, but Hawk was part of the pilot group due to his extensive fighter pilot experience. He was re-entry Capcom in STS-1, so obviously he knew Crippen pretty well from STS-1. His very first space flight came on STS-7, which is light, and he'll go on to fly on 2 further space shuttle missions, so we'll talk about Hawk again. Fabian, the first of the mission specialists. He also had a lot of fighter pilot experience, but he got more into engineering type stuff with satellites and development of the Canadarm, which, so specialties, they're on these shuttles for a reason. And Fabian would also go on to fly on another mission himself. So let's get to the actual important crew member of this mission, is Sally K. Ride, which, if you've noticed a trend through our STS mission so far, is no females. So Sally Ride was the first American woman to go to space, which I'll say American because there were actually 2 cosmonauts that actually went to space before her. But for it to take till STS-7 to get the first American woman into space, that was a little too long. She also holds another record to be the youngest American in space at 32, which I'm almost at that point, and think about that she got to go to space, and I'm sitting here in front of my computer playing a space game. Is like, wow, what have I done? You know? She went on to fly on 2 more missions after this, or actually no, this one and an additional another one before retiring from NASA. What else about her? Group 8. I forgot to mention this about Group 8, that it was the first group to select women. So obviously now that we're going to get more women astronauts. But Group 8, along with the rest of her classmates on this mission, was the first to select women. And she also served at Capcom in STS-2 and 3, so you've heard me mention her before, but now she's actually a crew. And she was a big proponent in developing the Canadarm. Who knew? And last but not least is Thagard. There's not much on Thagard other than he was an F-4 Phantom pilot in Vietnam, which, F-4 Phantoms. F4 Phantoms are decent. I like F4 Phantoms a lot. They strapped rockets to one and slammed it into a wall. They did that with an F4. It's kind of cool. And he would go fly on many more missions. I forget. I didn't write down how many more missions he would, but he logged over 140 days in space, which included going to Mir. He flew on Soyuz and the Space Shuttle a bunch more times. So Thagger does some stuff in the future after STS-7. All right, I'm gonna kill the engines now. Go ahead and get turned around. Or go for ET-SEP. ET-SEP confirm. Challenger probe STS disengaged, as always. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and key in our orbital insertion maneuver. Make sure I get a shot of that. So the crew was the easy part. I mean, it was the first to fly with 5, I believe. 6 only flew with 4. Am I correct in that? Yeah. 6 flew with 4. 7's the first with 5. So I think 5 to 8, I think, is about the range of crew we're talking about. So once we get into later missions, we're gonna have a lot of time spent on the crew, or not, because it's gonna be a lot of the repeat people. But we'll get some newbies in there too. It flew to a perigee of 299 miles with an average of 307, which is the highest orbit yet. STS-8 gets higher than that, but we go from STS-1, we're started at roughly 180. I think it's about 180 to 190 miles. So now we're reaching orbits of 300 miles circular. So they're obviously pushing the limits of the shuttle as these missions went on. Oh, one thing I should have noted on Ascent, what I got down here, is it was actually the first shuttle to show issues with foam falling off the external tank. They took some pictures of the external tank as it sept, and they saw that some foam pieces were missing. So they went back and reviewed the launch footage, and they saw that, yes, pieces came off the ET. So luckily there was no damage this time, but it was the first time they saw that happen. While in orbit, they actually had a piece of space debris hit one of the windows, which I guess I should have saved the picture of it, but it was like a 4mm wide dent in one of the windows from space debris. Luckily, it was a non-issue, but it's a little scary too at the same time. To have one of your windows cracked to frickin' outer space be hit by some space debris. Also, one other thing I wanted to note about the mission patch up there. You see the little red circle with the yellow in it? It's a 5-pointed thing, right? So it's like 4 male symbols and the 1 female symbol. I thought that was kind of clever with the mission patch. And then the Canadarm makes a 7. Alright, let's turn the lights on. Let's go and open up the payload bay, and then we'll talk about what's in this beast. Just kidding. I'll actually click on the open button and have it do the thing I want it to do. Back to the notes. So now that we're open, we'll do the same thing we did with STS-5. We need to close the sunshades on the satellites to protect them until deployment. So these canisters obviously look pretty familiar. We use them STS-5 for Annex C3 and SBS-3. Or Annex C1, C3, I forget. And these in these canisters we have Annex C2 for same company, Telesat of Canada, and Palapa B1, which is an interesting name for a satellite, but it's an Indonesian satellite. They serve the same purpose. They're digital communication satellites. They're of the same variety. They're the Hughes 376 satellites. And those were deployed over the first 2 days, so obviously one on one day, one on the other. Let's go ahead and chill this thing out for a second. Yeah. I need to deploy this. We'll get to that, what that antenna is for after we get the satellites deployed. Alright, so we're still a minute out. I don't see there's really much else I can say about the satellites that I haven't already said. In STS-5. They're the pretty much exact same type of satellites. They're just one for the same company, one from a different company. Well, different company as in another country. Other than that, pretty straightforward with these two satellites. The real meat comes with a shuttle pallet. That's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. I'm gonna have to use the RMS to grab it and then release it and then grab it again. We'll see how that goes. Okay, I'm gonna get close to the periapsis before I do my deploy, but it's about 45 seconds. They waited a full day in between deployments just to make sure that there was enough distance between that previous satellite, the orbiter, and the next satellite they deployed. Which makes sense. The thing's about to ignite a motor on the... You don't want to be anywhere close to it. Alright, 15 seconds. I'm going to go down to 10, and then we'll deploy. And 3, 2, 1, and mark. Alright, we're deploying Annex C3 or Telesat F, or C2. Annex C2 or Telesat F. Spin has started. And deploy. That was a good deploy. Better than the previous ones. A little bit of a wobble, but we're good. Cool. And these actually also were geosynchronous. So they used the PAM-D kick motors to get up to geosynchronous. So we'll do the same thing on the other side of the planet. I'm not going to switch craft yet. Deploy. This process always is super satisfying. A little more torque is being induced on this one. Don't hit, don't hit, don't hit. Okay, we're good. That moved quite a bit. But the sat's deployed. Ready? It's going out. Let's lock everything back up. Yeah, this is further away. Okay. Probe core. I want your probe core. Rename vessel. So this one was the first one. It was the Telesat. Oops, caps lock. Telesat F. No. I guess it's just a probe. Accept. Let me get the satellite fully deployed. Nice. Yeah, the shuttle's gonna be totally screwed up right now. Just don't blow up, please. Okay. This screwed up. So the shuttle's gonna be screwed up. Kind of. I don't get it. It shifted a bunch of stuff all over the place. Weird. Now the fun part begins with this mission. So, Since we got the 2 satellites deployed, next comes... We'll talk about... Where is it? The OSTA-2 payload. So that's this thing right here in between. And really all that is a bunch of science experiments. A lot of heating experiments and material experiments. And there's some GAS canisters, which is the getaway specials, which are represented by the mystery goos here. Comprised of instrument packages containing 6 experiments. Doesn't really say what experiments though. Located in the cargo bay. Oh, it consists of materials experiments assembly. I don't know what that is. So that MEA, the material experiments assembly on the OSTA payload, was a self-contained package to accommodate a lot of materials testing in microgravity. It was just to verify that the MEA hardware works and can be used on future missions. There's also a vapor growth alloy type semiconductor crystals, which if you're interested in that, you can read up on that. I assume that's using vapor to grow crystals for semiconductors, which seems cool. It makes me think of rock candy for some reason. And containerless processing of glass forming melts. Pretty self-explanatory. There's a German metallic experiment on it. And, well, this also had the latex reactor that I discussed in STS-7. And the continuous flow the CFES. That was also on STS-5. Similar experiments. Okay. This does not show what the OSTA stands for, but it just has a bunch of science experiments on it. This is kind of what it boils down to. The thing in front of it here, with the docking port on it, this is where the fun starts. So, this thing's called the SPAS-01, which I'm actually forgetting what that's called as well. I didn't write that down. Oh, I did. Shuttle Pallet Satellite. So SPAS. It was a special thing designed to either operate in the payload bay or operated by the RMS. Which in this case, it's going to be operated by the RMS or Canadarm. And they wanted to test, well, numerous things. Loads on the Canadarm, and if the orbiter could maneuver around a satellite that it wasn't connected to. So what I'm going to do is take the Canadarm, connect to it, move it away from the orbiter, disconnect it, thrust her away from it, and then thrust her back and grab it and put it back in. When I say this will be interesting, that's what I mean. That we have to grab this thing, let go of it, and bring it back again. So yes, that little antenna I have at the front of the payload bay was a KU band antenna. And on top of deploying the satellites, doing the SPAS deployment, they were supposed to test communicating with the TDARS satellite that was deployed on STS-6, just to make sure that the thing actually works. And what they found out that it kind of works. There were some problems, I think, was at the White Sands ground station, somewhere in here. Maybe it was STS-8 that had White Sands ground station issues, but they said it kind of worked, this antenna here. Kind of worked, kind of didn't. That didn't fix it at all. That looks kind of dope. Just with the Kerbal right there. These motors don't move very fast, so I kind of have to just wait for it to finish its thing before I do my next maneuver. Which I think was it got the first on-orbit external shots of a separate body, the shuttle. It docked. Okay. We have grabbed the SPAS. So, quick save again. Couple it from the payload bay. Alright, we're free. Ignore the realism. This thing's gonna be interesting to put back in there. I'm not looking forward to that. Here we go. So, before I deploy this, I'm going to mention... So yeah, the SPAS, it was a West German developed thing with a bunch of experiments, but it also had an American developed camera on it, which they used to take pictures of the orbiter while it was kind of maneuvering around the SPAS testing. Can the shuttle get real close to a satellite and not run into it? And can they... are the thrusters fine-tuned enough that if the pilot has to make enough adjustments around a satellite, can they do it? And spoiler, it went just fine. They actually said it performed a lot better than they thought they would. Or than they thought the orbiter would. I guess the thrusters did a really good job. So, move this out of the way. So it's on dock. I'm gonna let it get some separation. I can't tell which way my thrusters are firing. Okay. Create some distance. I think they got like 200 feet away from it. So I'm gonna set this as target. That's kind of essentially what they did. They also moved, so when they were positioning around it, they got 200 feet away. And they also, I think, tested getting in front of it and coming up to it that way, and then coming back down and going around. And then after they kind of did that for, I think, a few hours, they went back up and got close to it and grabbed it. Okay. Now the fun part. Let's try to grab it back again. Back position toward the rear. This is actually good practice because this will come up definitely in future missions. I mean, the most famous one is catching the Hubble to repair it. The one thing I'm afraid of is this right here. Magnetization issues. Get magnetization wrong, it's gonna fling it. And with the arm flopping all over the place, like, okay, we got it. Never mind capture. Alright, everything I just said, scratch it. We did it just fine. Ooh. Cool. We have capture. Put it back in the payload bay and let's bring her home. The prograde. Oop. We don't want to burn radial. I actually don't mind doing this. It's more fuel that I don't have to burn off. It's a longer burn. It says 5 seconds. I didn't stow. Reading these again. There we go. Now it's more realistic. You know what? I'm second guessing myself. The thing I just want to avoid, I want to be out of the atmosphere, well, out of re-entry right before KSC. Because then I could pitch up, kill a bunch of speed, and then start the turn. For this mission, they actually wanted to land at KSC's new shuttle landing facility that they just built. Or they had just finished before this mission. But due to bad weather, they couldn't land there, so they just sent it to Edwards instead. It landed at runway 15 at Edwards instead of runway 22. Once it landed on June 24th, it was sent back to KSC on June 29th, which will become more relevant once we talk about STS-8, which will not be tonight. If I can get it. Might have to do a turn and come around. Oh, we're losing speed. We're okay. Never mind. Just kidding. Trying to avoid hitting my mic with the joystick. It's always a problem. Alright, I think I finally got this re-entry thing down a little bit. And where I should point the maneuver and trajectories to get it to a right spot. Space Shuttle Challenger, you are cleared lane. Oop, oop. Roger. That was getting a little squirrely on me. Gotta be gentler in my movements here. Contact. Trying to prevent it from bouncing and trying to, if you don't brake as hard, it doesn't bounce quite as much, I think, but welcome back, Space Shuttle Challenger. Whew. Party shuttle. There we go. Okay. As I mentioned, they shipped it back. So it landed on the 24th. They shipped it back to KSC 5 days later. And then once we get to STS-8, they turned around the shuttle from arriving at KSC to being back on the pad very, very quickly. So that's cool to see. That it landed on the other side of the country. They shipped it, put it back on the pad, and sent it back up for STS-8. But yeah, that's STS-7, Space Shuttle Challenger. We'll see more of Challenger going forward.